This is the all-new Audi S8, and like its predecessors, it is a very difficult car to try and judge. It doesn't have anywhere near the sheer might of, say, a Mercedes S65 AMG, or the luxury and refinement of an S600 Maybach or a BMW M760 Li. However, as the sportiest car in the A8 lineup, Audi's most prestigious saloon, it should really be a very important car for the brand. But you wouldn't really know that just by looking at it, would you? The purpose of the S8 has always been that of a niche within a niche. It is designed to be very, very fast, but also reasonably discreet. It may not wear an RS badge, but its power plant would certainly be worthy of one. It's a 570 horsepower version of the same 4-litre twin-turbo V8 that you'll find in the current RS6 and a few other cars too. It also has nearly 600 pound-foot of torque, which means that despite a 2.2-ton curb weight, it's pretty rapid, 0 to 60 being dispatched in less than 4 seconds, and of course the top speed being 155. Uncorked, who knows how quick it'll go, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went straight through 200. From the outside, there is very little to give away this car's identity. You have S8 badges, front and rear, you've got quad exhaust tips at the back, and on the side, these aluminium wing mirror caps. But that's about it. In fact, even these 20-inch alloys which you get on the base model S8 look pretty diminutive when they're fitted to a car that's more than 5 metres long and 2 metres wide. In many territories, this car's available only as a short wheelbase version. However, for the first time ever, in certain markets you can get your S8 in long wheelbase too. That being said, even in the short one, there is loads of legroom in the back, and more impressively, quite a bit of boot space too, which is never a given in top-flight full-size saloon cars. A lot of work has gone into the suspension on the S8, meaning that it should be able to switch between bruiser and cruiser at the drop of a hat and do a convincing job in both roles. Now you have a multi-link setup both front and rear, and to that Audi have attached a proper active suspension. That means they're able to control just how much the car will roll in certain situations. They've introduced a new mode called Comfort Plus, and that can scan the road ahead, meaning the suspension and car are braced for whatever is coming, so it can relax when it's able to and also firm up when it needs to. In comparison to a traditional suspension setup, this car will experience less than half the amount of roll you'd normally expect. But it does that without any compromise in comfort, and I can tell you this is a very comfortable car. However, given the size of it, work has also been done to make sure that it's quite nimble too, despite its size. And for that, Audi have introduced an active steer system at the back, meaning that at low speeds in particular, this car feels surprisingly agile. In the past, Audi did not do different trim levels for their S and RS products, but now they do. And I've driven a few base level cars recently which I've thought were a little bit stingily equipped. This car is not as bad as some others, but it's still missing a few things you really would think you'd find on a £100,000 S8. It has double glazing and soft closed doors as standard. You've also got radar guided cruise, which is not standard even with, say, the RS6 or RS7. But you don't have cooled or massaged front seats. You don't even have heated rear seats. There are no blinds in the back either. And so, if you are going to buy a car like this, I'd say to give some serious thought to getting the Vorsprung model, which is the top of the line one. It is going to be quite a bit more, but trust me, from experience, when you then sit in it, you do feel like you've got an awful lot more car. The interior of the S8 is very similar to that of the A8 that I drove last year, which is to say it's very underwhelming. It's certainly a high quality place and the materials are generally pretty good, although there are some scratchy plastics in places that you really shouldn't be able to find them. But the big problem for me is that if you've been in an Audi A6, it doesn't really seem to be that much difference. There are some nice touches. The steering wheel's airbag is a little bit nicer, and these seats are fabulous. But even they don't have quite as much adjustment as I would like them to, and there are just too many things in here which require you to touch them and then instantly smear them. Even the air vents here have a little touch-sensitive control for them. It's just all very unnecessary. But that being said, I've done quite a few miles in this car already. It doesn't creak, it doesn't rattle, and it's eerily quiet. It is a very good place to cover miles. From an engineer's perspective, trying to build a car which is both sporty and luxurious is extremely difficult because those two things often require exactly opposite solutions. So with the S8, have Audi managed to strike a really decent blend, or is this merely an awkward halfway house between the two? Let's find out. It has been a very tricky so-and-so to work out the S8. Because it is a car that's expected to have such broad abilities, you can't quite decide what it's meant to be best at when it's supposed to be great at everything. The first few hundred yards, if not mile or so, in the S8 are very disconcerting. You feel like you're entirely disconnected from the road, and the car seems to be doing all sorts of strange things on its own, particularly if you are in the new Comfort Plus mode. Oh, there's no normal Comfort mode anymore, this is what you get. But then after a short while you start to realise that actually that is the suspension really working some actual magic. This thing rides exceedingly well for a big old 2.2 ton barge. I know it's meant to be comfy and luxurious, but that's something not a lot of these cars can ever pull off, and this does it in style. The next thing you realise is that it is shockingly darty, especially at low speeds. That rear wheel steering makes a huge difference, and it will turn into corners with a surprising amount of keenness. I do like the fact that the exhaust is somewhat more restrained than in the RS products. There's no pops and burbles, even in its most vocal setting. And it's no shrinking violet from outside either, it still makes a good old noise. It doesn't quite have the punch of an RS6, which is a simple result of it weighing even more and having just a little bit less power, but you'd certainly never say it was lacking for pace. It's still plenty quick enough to impress pretty much anybody. I've had a couple of people out in the car to share their opinion, and these are people who are used to pretty quick cars, and they've all come away fairly impressed with the big Audi. Compared with the outgoing S8, I would say it's a much more driver-focused car. The steering has a lightness to it, which is very disappointing, even in dynamic mode. But there is no doubting the fact it will get round a bend much quicker. One disappointment is the 8-speed gearbox. It just never seems quite as sharp as the old one, and that's very confusing because the hardware shouldn't really have changed all that much, and if anything this should have gotten even quicker. But even in full attack mode in dynamic and all that jazz, it never quite has the bite of the old system. It feels a bit more rounded, a bit smoothed off. Very odd. In normal comfort mode, you never really notice it, and the box has no problem shuffling all the way to 8th before you've even realised what it's doing. There are the best part of 40 different systems in here, all designed to save you from yourself, and the majority of them I don't really see any point in. One that I would actually like in a car like this, or a car of this size more accurately, is the blind spot warning system. Visibility is not bad in the car, however, there's quite a few occasions where I wouldn't mind being told that there is somebody lurking over there trying to get themselves into trouble. And for a car to have so much in here and not that, just seems a bit odd. I've no doubt at all if you go for the Vorsprung or option an extra pack in here, you'll get it. But to me, it's one of these things that should just be standard, really, in a car of this type and price. I guess that's one of the core issues, really, with the S8. Oh, watch here, by the way. You'll see what I mean about this rear steer. Round, round. Wasn't even on full lock. Brilliant. And then you can put your foot down. This core problem that the S8 has is its price, because at more or less £100,000, it's the same as you're going to pay for an RS6, or it's the same as you pay for an A8L. And I think the vast majority of customers really are going to want to go with one of either of those, because this car is missing the ludicrous cross-country pace that the RS6 has, and also something of the aggression, if that's your bag. And it's also nowhere near as luxuriously equipped as an A8L would be at the same money. It's bizarre then that it rides better than the A8, but that's just how it is. I think it certainly helps that this car is on 20-inch wheels. 21s are optional here, and on the RS6 you'll go up to 22s, same with the RS7. As a normal day-to-day tool, I think this is a much better car. It's when you start to press on a little bit that things become less clear. See, you put this car into dynamic mode and it will absolutely devastate more or less any road that you throw it at. Allow me to demonstrate. Going fast has never felt less stressful than it does in this car, and that really is part of the problem. It makes the business of being quick very dull indeed. I know that is an accusation thrown at an awful lot of fast saloons, and Audis in particular, but I very rarely find it to be true. Here though, it is. The RS6 really comes alive when you start to push it, and it feels exciting. It also shrinks around you a little bit. This thing never does. You're always aware of the sheer scale of the thing, and on a road like this, it's very much out of its comfort zone. Yes, I know there are roads it would be much better suited to, but I don't live on those, and this is pretty typical of what most British B roads actually look like. I've never known a car in which it's really quite so easy to speed. So often you'll find yourself going far quicker than you should be, because it's just so damn good at isolating you from the outside world. With all the double glazing and sound insulation that this thing has, it really does separate you from everything going on elsewhere. This clearly is a car meant for the Autobahn. It's not meant for the M1 or the A14. It's extremely composed, and I've got to say, the suspension is an absolute revelation. Even in dynamic, this is still one of the most comfortable vehicles I've ever road tested. And I suppose, if this is a car which is simply meant to get from A to B quickly or comfortably, it's pretty good at that. But here is the real big problem, because at the two extremes of the scale, a very capable car indeed. Not that luxurious, granted, as an A8L, and not that quick as an RS6, that's fine, but never was it going to be. No. The bigger problem is a slightly more philosophical one. You see, all cars with this engine gearbox setup from Audi seem to suffer from the same problem. And that's that going at medium speeds is very difficult indeed. You can go fast in it, fine. You can go slow in it, fine. But if you just want to press on a little bit, make good progress, it's nearly impossible. Now, if you switch yourself into manual mode and do everything and put it in dynamic and all that jazz, it can just about be done, but it's not actually particularly easy. The engine is very boosty, and if you're in any of the automatic gearbox modes, you put your foot down a little bit and nothing happens. You put your foot down a little bit more and everything happens, and all of a sudden you're then going way faster than you wanted to. I had an R8 on the driveway for a little bit, and that was a car which was excellent at doing the sort of 6/10 bit, because it had that naturally aspirated engine. It just did what you told it to. So flexible, so predictable, so precise. This thing really is something of a sledgehammer. You can't use it for delicate work. You can't really just measure your speed and make it just so. For example, we're now in a national speed limit part of the road. I'll let it open up. We're doing about 35 miles an hour, and then I'll want to gently get to about 60. So put my foot down a little bit and nothing's happening. Foot down a little bit more, and now it's really going. And it's just a little bit frustrating. Now, that was in manual mode, so it was holding gear. Allow me to show you what it's actually like most of the time when you're in auto, because in this kind of car, you do want to be in auto a lot. So we're now in drive, and the car's already shuffled into sort of 5th gear by the time we're at about 30 miles an hour. So I don't want to be doing 30 mile an hour. I want to be going quicker than that. So I'm going to put my foot down a little bit, and because it's in 6 now, it's doing nothing. Foot down a little bit more, nothing still. Oh, now it's shifted a gear, and it's got a lot more boost, and then it just goes. And there's a huge delay in that process. Everything takes quite a long time. It just shouldn't. It really shouldn't. This is another example of these cars, I think, being a little bit blunted to make them just a little bit easier, certainly on the environment, if nothing else. And it's a shame. In a car like this, I can actually find a touch more forgiveness for that than I can in, say, the RS6 or the RS7, which is supposed to be more of a precision driving tool. But the S8 is the oddest of all cars, because it doesn't really do anything aside from that badly. It's actually a wonderful thing to do miles in. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing about 500 miles, and this is the perfect car for doing it, as I'm not going to be in the back seats. The lack of luxury there doesn't affect me at all. And maybe that's the difference. Should you buy an A8L or should you buy an S8? Well, are you going to be in the front or are you going to be in the back? Are there going to be people in the back frequently? Because if there are, the A8L is the better car to get. If not, take the S8. Just do it. It's a wonderful thing. But I just can't help but think, in the UK, this is not a car that's meant for us. Simple as that. I like it a lot, I really do, but I just don't love it. There is also that small issue that despite all the mild hybrid stuff Audi have thrown at it, even when you're being fairly gentle, it'll only do about 23.5 to the gallon. So if you are just doing boring motorway stuff, quite an expensive way to do it, really. So there we have it. That is the Audi S8. Hope you've enjoyed this little review. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.